So, hope everything's going well with all of you. I decided to do something on whim, unconventionally, and that is just comment on spiritual teachers that I've been seeing around the place. So, I don't normally do this. I don't like talking about people. Everyone does their own thing, and in general, there's no point for it. But I just realized that there are certain teachers that are controversial and people tend to think that they're cults, or maybe they are. And so I just want to tell my commentary so that you can kind of understand what they believe and why they believe it, or why they might believe it, because I obviously don't have every single perfect understanding of every in and out, even though I may feel that I do. Now, because creation is created in the present, you can actually know that, but that's a separate thing. So let's start with Byron Katie. I haven't studied the works of Byron Katie that much, but looking back, I feel like I shouldn't comment. She's good. Ram Dass, check out his work. Towards the end of his life, he started getting the 5-MeO DMT experience. He was stage clear. You can look at that. Eckhart Tolle, good stuff. You can learn a lot from him. He's mostly into the present moment as the guide for your life. Deepak Chopra deals with the spiritual sciences of why or how we can get a better life, knowing how the body functions. So he has more of an upper right quadrant understanding, so he's kind of in the middle between the upper right and upper left. Thich Nhat Hanh, very upper left in my opinion, very peaceful. I would place him somewhere between the upper left and the upper left, and lower left. I'm a little dyslexic, so excuse me. A very beautiful, calm individual who passed away this year. Adyashanti, probably an expert on how to guide you to the present moment or guide you to the now. Okay, I don't know who Jack Korn something is. Sorry, I'm not, sometimes I just don't care to check people out. John Kabat, I don't know. A lot of these. Muji. Muji is really good to guide you to the present moment, but to do it in a way that is no BS. So if you want a guide like that, that could be helpful. Now, a lot of these teachers, they're turquoise, using lower right quadrant structures, but they're accessing clear. So they're pretty much clear, and they went through an enlightenment process. So they're in stage clear. But the only way to get to stage clear is you have to go through a turquoise format. And therefore, you're kind of pulled down by turquoise ideologies or turquoise structures. And once you're already pulled down by other belief systems and structural formats, you're going to be pulled down even further without you realizing it. Even though Muji seems to be centered and clear most of the time. In my opinion, of course. And these things have a multi-dimensional component, so it's not always so this is cut that way and that is cut that way. Sometimes there's multiple colors, facets that go into each description. I heard a lot of these people, I just didn't check them out. I had no interest. Pema Chodron I heard of, I just don't know about her. I'm going through like a bunch here. So I guess you can say I don't know about a lot of these old teachers, but I've studied some of their works. I've seen quotes here and there. Also, I have a skill that is very rare, where because I don't exist, because I'm in the upper left quadrant, you automatically understand people better. So you don't have to delve into the ins and outs of things. You'll just understand it. Osho, good teacher, some controversial things. You don't need to go crazy if you don't like what he says, or if you feel he was hypocritical in some ways in how he runs his life in terms of materialism, or how he runs his operation like a cult sometimes. Ramana Maharshi, an excellent, concrete, coherent understanding of reality or the brain. I think I noticed the way he says things, it factors in how the right and the left quadrants are in sync. Now, there's a person who I know does this very well. One of, was it Krishnamurti? So teachers who are able to do this, I consider them in stage aubergine, which is, right? Above teal/violet and between and before clear. And the only, right, okay, keep it like that for simplicity's sake. So Ramana Maharshi, if you want coherency on lofty states, check that out. Now, it doesn't mean these teachers that I'm skipping won't be important in the future. Just right now, I didn't find them the most significant for me in my life, but I'll definitely check them out later on. I'll definitely see them around and be like, you know what, I should look at that further. Rumi has a lot of great quotes implying that his understanding was unique. Okay, so those are the ones illustrated on Google when I looked for just all the teachers. Listofspiritualteachers.org. Maybe this will help. But the reason why I made this video is because of Bentino Massaro. I can't remember. Bentino Massaro. So apparently he's been accused of running a cult for a long time, and it kind of is cultic because what he did was he said, you can be my follower, but pay $1 million. And that way he's good to go for the next year or two, and he gets to live in luxury and all that. And he's kind of using spirituality as a way to kind of forget about the world's problems. So he's not a good example for solving worldwide issues. And so a lot of teachers who take the Eastern ideas and bring it to the Western world, if they sustain it too long, they can adopt this delusional approach where, because there are problems in the external world and problems are illusory and has no relevance to my experience, I'll just forget about them if I can, right? And so that's no different than a hedonist. That's no different than a dysfunctional addict who's trying to forget about the world's problems. In this case, the addict is controlled with meditation. Like, he's able to use meditation to stay grounded, and that's great. Meditation is fantastic, but there's clearly some issues that he's bypassing, and so that's what people noticed. And so one of the girls that left him, I don't know, maybe she had a fallout in a relationship and she felt hurt. Her name was, you can look it up, a Rolling Stone article was just published. She was very happy about it. She doesn't have many followers, but what was her name again? Something like Callie something. I put it in my notes, but can't even see my notes because my phone is covering it. But anyways, you can look that up. And so even though there's an agenda, the follower slept with the students. Oh, so that's another thing. Is it ethical for teachers to sleep with their students? So when it comes to tradition is you shouldn't, in spiritual traditions, you generally don't want to have sex with anyone because it's a distraction. It's the physical world. But that's coming from stage blue ideologies. Okay, so you don't need to take that. It's kind of a choice. It's also based on belief systems of the time and the fact that drama automatically comes out when you have relationships for people that are in previous stages. So you have to be above, you have to be above green to avoid most of the problems that happen in relationships and to not go crazy if things don't work out. That's generally how it works. Otherwise, you have too big of an ego to let it go and stuff like that. Like, once you reach stage turquoise, if you feel hurt, it's much easier to let it go. It just, you let yourself feel it, you're upset, and then 12 hours later, you're kind of over it because you've done what you needed to do to get it out of your system. Whatever it is, talking it over with a friend, writing in your journal, or talking to God, or whatever you do to cope. So when it comes to sex, it's not like it's horrible to consider sex as a terrible thing in your spirituality. Now, the question is, are you allowed to sleep around during your spiritual practices? And yeah, of course, that's what Tantra is about. Harmonize, and there's tons of traditions that harmonize sexuality with spirituality. And even in Judaism, there's a big mitzvah, a big good deed to have relations on Shabbat. And you're supposed to have intention that you're fulfilling a requirement, you're fulfilling the satisfaction of the body that's going to be elevating your spirit and your soul and your being. And so that's actually going to help yourself. It's going to help the world, the world by extension, stuff like that. But the point is, it's a spiritual practice in various traditions, spanning all of these teachings. So now the question is, now that we established that sex is okay, sex with spirituality is okay, is sex with spirituality with your students okay? So this is where ethical dilemmas have been proposed, and the ethical dilemma is, are you taking advantage of the person? Because the person is trusting you to guide them. right? And so here you're being selfish, right? And so what if the student loves the teacher? And that's a form of showing love. So that's another question that comes into play. So there's still ethical questions that persist. And you're not really going to resolve this, because until everyone in the country, until everyone who's ever going to watch this video, or everyone's going to watch, they're all out of blue and they're out of orange and they're mostly in green and moving to yellow, when the judgments stop against people for being human, that's when you could talk about this, you know? So I can't say it's okay or not okay, but it really depends on the circumstance. It depends if it depends if you're honest about your needs. So the problem with spiritual teachers is that spiritual teachers believe that they're righteous, right? They're not honest about how they're not perfect. And that's where the problem lies with this sort of thing. Because true perfection is a question, and usually perfection, it overlaps with not needing the bodily needs, which is a can of worms because it's not true. Or it's so rare that it's not applicable to anyone, or at least for most of their life, until they're 80 or until they're 70, and their hormones have diminished, and their priorities have changed, and they're thinking more long-term, because they already have children, already raised children, and know what's important in life. Because you can't understand the future, and you can't perceive future events until you have children. That's in terms of long-term thinking. But if you advance psychology, no, it's not using those terms. When you feel like other people are your children, then you will be able to predict the future. So teachers who don't view their students like their children can't predict the future. They're not reliable. Now, if you view your students like a child, why would you sleep with your child? It's something you have to really think about. I mean, this is a very controversial topic. Is love supposed to be that kind of relationship? And that's a different discussion. But you see that you really have to be an expert in human psychology to establish whether or not it's appropriate for a teacher to sleep with a student. Now, fundamentally, I think there could be cases where that might work, but in general, you want to steer clear from the conversation. Notice I'm not saying it's okay, and it's not saying either way. But in general, people coming to this channel are usually in stage turquoise, but that's not true. I get people that are in stage orange, and the reason why they're in stage orange is because they want to know how to develop themselves. And orange, like, I gotta develop, I gotta grow, right? So the secret to how to grow, just to establish it now, is you want to just follow your progress. And I predict, I knew this before other teachers were saying it. If you follow your progress day after day, you will grow. So I stopped growing. I was able to stop at level 13. It's about in the model that is part of developmental psychology. Why? Because I'm keeping track of my progress, and I decided to stop. So my progress stopped, and I'm okay. Now people could think I'm in green, they could think I'm in orange, they could think I'm in all these stages. Doesn't matter. I know I'm in 13. I'm going to stay there for as long as I can because I stopped. And if you want to stay in aubergine, because it's the best stage, unless you get into clear, then you could choose to go into aubergine, right? If that's your decision, then that's also an option. Just stop following your progress. Now, eventually, it may catch up to you, and you'll have moved up already. You'll evolve, right? Because there is a sort of a natural evolution that does seem to take place. But to stay on topic, the ethical question is certainly a valid one, and I personally believe that you have to be really careful how you word this whole thing, because there is no right and wrong. Like if you do anything, it's not good or bad, but what is good and bad is what the psyche says is going to bring consequences. So there is an underlying consciousness that kind of polices people or wants to, and there's different parts of mankind that are that natural policing system, right? So then, of course, you have to be careful because there's going to be automatic consequences if people don't like what you're doing. So it's not a matter of right and wrong, it's a matter of policing. So you see, what is going to bring consequences? Now, you're a psychopath. You say you should do no, I'm not saying hurt anyone. I'm saying the ethics of the question are relying upon a majority viewpoint that's going to instill something in your subconscious about what you should or shouldn't do. And because that's the case, that's how we should be framing it. That's the truth. That's what it comes down to. But in terms of this specific teacher, he went down the rabbit hole. He went down a rabbit hole of his own subconscious, started projecting out right and wrong without kind of realizing that's what he was doing, and he just went with it until people wrote articles about him for being unethical and for being problematic. Now, am I going to add him to my email list because of all these things? Probably not. I added Leo Gura. Yes, you can... He's aware of what I've been creating. I update him on my technologies. I think it's his email because there's only a couple options, and so I hope it's his email. Yeah. And so he knows that the science of reality overlaps with consciousness itself. That creation and science are harmonized in such a way that your own perception is influenced, and a collective perception influences, and also predicts what it will be. But there's a collective underlying phenomenon that's pre-established, and therefore is created and will be created based upon what is going to happen from a probabilistic standpoint. So that's what I've been doing. I've been collecting the advanced intellects, and they're being. I've been proving systematically that I'm in the upper left quadrant, and showing how psychic abilities are real. And so, like, if a teacher is not having psychic abilities, and then they're not tapping into the upper left quadrant, and if they don't have the capacity to do that, I don't think you should take them so seriously. Now, do you have to have visions in a particular way in order to do that? Could you have other senses and other abilities? Absolutely. And I don't have a monopoly on what the upper left quadrant embodies. What do extrasensory abilities embody? I simply tapped into my own, and they're developing every day. Some people have the capacity to touch books, and they understand what the book says without reading it. They have incredible abilities, some people. So they would touch the computer and know exactly what the website says without needing to read it. And so I can work on those abilities, but it takes time, and you really have to work through it. I'm not going to pretend I have these things. I'm holding in a place that I'm not. But where I am holding is I have extrasensory abilities. I've developed them over the years. And if you don't have any of that, and you still think that you're this lofty teacher, I doubt it. I would ask. I would re-examine the qualifications. Now, you could have the upper left quadrant and be on the outside, but generally speaking, they can easily get confused with the with someone who's just nowhere near the upper left, and so therefore, who's in a lower tier of development, and therefore you have to assume that those people are not going to be helpful, and a lot of times they're going to be egotistical and arrogant, and they're not going to be helpful for those in the upper left quadrant who are the most neglected people in society. And those are the misfits. Those are the people who really need the most help, because they have psychic abilities and they have narratives that are unconventional and sometimes are very true, but then they don't get corroborated, because corroboration has to do with a truth process of from a collective standpoint, and so they're neglected. So we can't support one quadrant over the other. That's what we've been doing for thousands of years, and without realizing it. And so therefore, that's the issue at play. We want to make sure that we're factoring as many dimensions as possible, and also keep in mind that because we've been neglecting the upper left for so long, or in the camera it's probably going to be this way if I'm not mistaken, then we have to go to the other way, and we have to we're starting so much in the upper right quadrant that we have to go to the other way to balance out for all the neglect of the people that don't fit in as a result of having a different kind of mind. And obviously you may not fit in because you have a different way of thinking that involves other quadrants, unconventionality in regard to how they want to structure other environments and relate to other people, other systems. And so that's something to keep in mind, that we're not, it's not all about the upper left quadrant. It's also about other quadrants that will be assisted, and this principle will be applied as time goes on. We just want to make sure, as Corey Davos recently said it in like 2 months ago, maybe 3, that we want to be in the center of the graph. If we're somewhere up here, we want to make sure that we can come down here. Now, there is like a circle that indicates that you're on the outside, meaning you're progressing out in stages as you go out of the spiral. but still, forget about that. You want to make sure that you're going to the center. So, but you'll be in your center. You'll be in your sphere center, right? So if you're in green and yellow and then turquoise, so you'll be somewhere up here, right? And that'll be what's gonna happen. So all these spiritual teachers are amazing, but they do not have a grasp of how everyone just thinks differently. Now, is that a 4-quadrant system? Is it an aqual system of 8 octants, right? 8 octants is really cool, is really relevant. I've been seeing visions that imply that the aqual, the 8 octants is significant. Or is it multiple? Is it 16? Is it double that with half quadrants? Because apparently there's a way of reading the graph where if you're part of a lower half of a certain square on the graph, then it's a completely different ballgame. It's a different minutia that applies to the mind of the individual. So there's complexities that you want to keep in the back of your mind as you're plotting these points and as you're understanding these things. But what I'm saying is there's probably a dimension that crosses paths that are multiple. There's like an angle that loops around, right? So that you have to apply a U shape, where there's a quadrant here and a quadrant there, and you put a U that curves around. So you're the U. You're the U, and it goes into these 2 points. So you're at a point that implies these 2 points. Okay, so it's a unique shape, and that'll be your quadrant or octant. But when you have a multi-dimensional component, what are we going to call it? So that's going to be factored in. So what the teachers of the future are going to be incredibly wise, because they're going to have what I call a mind that is multi-dimensional, a mind that is not fixated on one thing. They don't pressure anyone to be one way. And so if you're speaking from that place of no one has to be any one way, you're going to offer the most kind of freedom and the most kinds of structure simultaneously, because you're factoring in multiple components, possibly even sensing out what the needs of a given body is like, what they require. And this was only possible for what? The Osho. And that teacher and that teacher. But what I'm doing here is you're creating a system where everyone can be these great teachers, where everyone has the mind of a psychic or of an extraordinary mind that's going to make what you consider the most lofty people to worship the very people that are watching this video, the very people in everyday society. And so we're making what we thought was impossible possible. We're bringing the wisdom to the masses in an organized way with an organized system. So please sign up for my Patreon. It's only $5 a month right now. Get it while it's cheap. And I hope you have a great day.